Hello and welcome. I'm Jessica Shales, Managing Director of the Ideal Marketing Company, and I'm here to take you through week 4 of a 12-week series called Communicating in a Crisis, dedicated to helping you understand how to modify your communications at this time, do a bit of housekeeping, and prepare to bounce back when the crisis is over. So, welcome to week 4 of Communicating in a Crisis and beyond. This week we're going to be talking about getting insights from the data that you've got. The emphasis will be on Google Analytics, but the model that I'm going to be talking about will apply to any kind of data source. So even if you don't have Google Analytics or you don't plan to use that, then it will still be relevant. This is the structure for today. We're actually moving into the more and beyond element. If you're interested in any of the initial series, they're all available on the website. I've actually got the link at the end of this slide here. So if you want to view the initial ones that are really more about how to change your communication strategy at this time, how to manage your online reputation as well, and how to understand what's going on for your customers, those are all really valuable, and I've got some guests. This week it's just me because I'm a data nerd. I love all this kind of stuff, but it's also after the Easter long weekend. I thought it was only fair that I don't it's more difficult to kind of drum up some interest. So today we're going to be talking about, it's kind of a bit of housekeeping, having a look at things that maybe you always meant to do really. We're going to start by talking about what counts. For example, there's an awful lot of data in Google Analytics. So the difference between clarity and vanity metrics, we're going to go over that. It will also include a digital marketing measurement model and the process that you'll go through. An awful lot of the paid for workshops or webinar on this subject that we do, the surprise is that actually 50% to 75% of the work that you need to do in order to get insightful reporting is done outside of the reporting tool. And it's around establishing what it is that matters to your business. Where to start, so I'll give you some optimization tips and then also the things that you need to do to make sure that you're measuring what matters. Then we'll also go on to reporting tools and dashboards, the extra customization that's available that you might not know about, and then also reporting insights. This is kind of going full circle to what we'll be talking about in the beginning, making sure that you keep on going back to what you established. Then we'll also move to a Q&A at the end. You can ask a question at any point in your chat. Please don't be offended if I ignore you. It might be because I know that we're going to answer the question at some point, or I think it'd be better for Q&A. The thing with Q&A is actually it's private. Number one, it gives you more, I suppose, security that whatever you ask is not going to be shared on YouTube afterwards. But also, I think you should only benefit from a Q&A if you turn up to the live webinar. Okay, so moving forward. Who measures their marketing? I can see that 6 out of 8, 75% of you have voted. So those two that are left, please do let me know how you use Google Analytics, whether it's installed and how often you do, because it really helps me. At the moment, what I can see is that actually a lot of you don't look at it very often, so that helps me to understand where you're at. And again, if you're not sure whether Google Analytics is on your website, it's gachecker.com is a great site for just checking. So what can be measured? When I was at university, or one of the first month or so, there was a quote shared by Lord Leverhulme, and it was something on the lines of, I know that 50% of my marketing works, I just don't know which 50%. And that was kind of used as an excuse to just keep on spending money on marketing and advertising because you don't know what's going to happen if you stop. With digital marketing, it's an awful lot easier to measure what's going on. You can see, particularly from your website, Google Analytics helps you to track what people are doing and to be able to measure success. Also, most social media platforms have got it as well, and email marketing have all got reporting. However, despite the fact that I'm a data nerd, there is an awful lot of place for the brand building activities, and actually week 3 of this series talks about the brand building exercises that you can't measure. They will improve your conversion rates, but it's very difficult to know that in the end, and I'll talk a bit more about this. So there's just this big caveat that we are going to talk about how to measure where possible, but there will always be parts of your marketing that could be very, very important and you won't be able to measure that, and that's more around how people feel about your brand. So if the name of the game is to measure return on investment, then first of all, you have to decide what it is that investment or return on investment looks like. With Google Analytics, I've already said that not everything that counts, or that there's an awful lot of data there, and this is a great quote, maybe by Albert Einstein. There's an awful lot of quotes attributed to him, but either way, it's a really good one. So not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. The bit that we're really going to pay attention to in this point is that not everything that can be counted counts, and that's what Google Analytics does a lot. So we're going to really focus in on what to pay attention to. What I'm referring to is vanity and clarity metrics. This is something that I've become particularly aware of because of a gentleman called Avinash Kaushik, I think is how you pronounce his name. He works for Google. He does an awful lot. He's got a brilliant email newsletter and website, which I'm going to forget the name of. But I will link to in the end, or share it afterwards. And he makes data a lot more human. He explains how to represent data in graphs in a way that's understandable. And he's great. And so what he talks about is vanity versus clarity metrics. Vanity are surface level metrics. So you're more likely to be thinking about, okay, well, we've seen an increase in the amount of people on our website. So that might be vanity metric, because you'd be like, yeah, this is great, and we've got like our engagement rates are way up. But the clarity metric is more likely to be something that affects your business. For example, an increase in sales, an increase in conversion rates, an increase in average order value if you've got an e-commerce website. So these are things that you have to outline and define. Clarity metrics, you have to define them in order for them to be counted. A lot of the time when people are looking at Google Analytics, they have a habit of focusing on the vanity. And the reason why is because actually, unless you define what success looks like, Google doesn't know. So your opportunity to tell Google what matters to you when somebody visits your website is to set up a goal. A goal is when you say, if somebody does this behavior, I consider that to be a successful visit. And there are all sorts of things. If we think about an e-commerce website, you can have e-commerce tracking, which is slightly different. There's a whole different area, but it's almost like a goal would be a sale. If I think the majority of the people on this call don't have an e-commerce website, if you're dealing with professional services businesses, for example, it's more likely to be getting a telephone call, which you can track on mobile, getting an email, someone clicking on your email links, filling out a form, potentially visiting your contact page. So any of those goals would be a really solid lead for you. So that is what a goal is. It would be where marketing, where the website has led to a business lead for you. So that's what you consider to be a conversion. Your marketing strategy will be impacted by the goals that you set up. And one of the things to think about, this can kind of feel like you can end up in a bit of a cycle, because when you look at your website, you might think, well, actually, I don't have a form. I do have a contact page, but the links don't seem to be clickable. So it may be that in order for you to set up measurements, you do need to change your website a little bit. Maybe you don't have a contact page, for example, so you might want to add one, or you might want to add a form and make sure that all of the links around your email are clickable, that on mobile your phone numbers are clickable, so that those measurements are all in place. So that's an example where you think, well, I want to be able to measure this. Is it there? I'll talk a little bit more about, I'll give a couple of examples, and that will help you to understand your marketing strategy. Once you have defined your marketing strategy for reaching that business goal, then you can think about the measurements, the KPIs and the targets, or key performance indicators and targets that you're going to use. This is the right order to put things in or to go through. If you try and do it the other way around, you either end up with getting in a bit of a kind of a confusing mess, or it's not optimized, so it's not the best opportunity. So I'm going to talk about in the next slide, the digital marketing and measurement model, because this is the ideal process to go through. The way that this has been written, and this is from Avinash Kaushik, so you can see the link at the bottom. The way that this has been written, it's assuming that actually you're in the kind of size of organisation where you do have people you have to go up to. It may be that you're a one-man band, in which case all of these people are you, but you've just got to think about it with different hats on. So this is the process to go through. So the first thing you have to think about is your business objective. So like I said, this is all outside of Google Analytics. You're not getting close to any data at this point. So you identify your business objectives up front. It may be the odds are that you want to make more money. But it may be that you want to make more money by being more profitable. It may be that you think that you want to access more of the available market. It might be that you see an opportunity with a particular industry, for example. So set those up based on, they should be based on market research, competitor research, having a look at what's going on. So then you would want to drill that down into goals for each business objective. So if you want to make more money, then it might be, and I'm going to give an example in a bit for an e-commerce website, then there'll be different ways to do that. For example, to sell more to each client, so that might be growth on a per client basis, might be to, you know, the other way to do it is to reach more people. Then write down the key performance indicators, and then identify targets. And the very last step, step 5, is when you kind of get into the data. And so the first 4 are about outlining the plan. Step 5 can be a really helpful thing to drill into the data afterwards. It's where Google Analytics have got all this, they've been, you know, it's been gathering all this information, and actually the questions that are raised by the first 4 steps, once you get some data back, you can then dig in, and then it actually makes, then the information is more valuable because it's tied to business objective rather than it being vaguely interesting, which is what can happen an awful lot. Okay, so an example would be your objective is to increase sales on this is an e-commerce website because it's easy to understand. Then the goal would be to, in order to increase sales or make more money from the website, really, the goal would be to increase there's a couple of goals here, to increase your conversion rate, so more of the people who come through to your website will buy something, and also to increase customer spend per customer. The way that these goals would impact your marketing strategy in 2 different ways. If you want to increase your conversion rate, then you need to have a look at maybe your Google Analytics to see what pages people leave. Is there a problem with the speed on your website? You know, is there anything that is more difficult? If you have a look at your mobile versus your desktop performance, or you know, conversion stats, and you might find that actually on mobile you're having more problems. So therefore you would change your display or the way that your website displays on mobile to help that conversion rate in that area. So that's where the data can help. So as a result of those things, your marketing strategy might be to do a whole load of user experience design changes to improve conversion rates. If you, in the other case, want to increase customer spend per customer, then you could create bundles, create free packaging over a spend of £50. So say, for example, your average order value was £30, you could put free postage over £50. You could also create more bundles together, so things that you suggest people do buy together, so that it's easy for people to go, yeah, actually that is better. You could also add tools at the bottom that say people who bought this, what you're looking at now, also bought this. So suggesting what else people go for. You could also have an email marketing strategy where if somebody has bought something 6 months ago, and you know it normally takes 6 months before someone's run out, you email them, as long as you've got permissions, obviously. It may be that you take someone's birthday when they sign up and then give them a coupon code. All sorts of things kind of go on. So your marketing strategy in that point of view is that you change different things about the website. And you also might tack onto that social media and email marketing strategy if you're trying to increase the average order value. So these kind of all help. So the key performance indicator for those 2 things would be conversion rate and average order value, which might seem a bit like, well, you just repeated yourself, but that's the measurement that's inside Google Analytics that you want to have a look at. And then your target, you just draw a line in the sand. It doesn't need to be perfect or right, you just need to draw a line in the sand. sometimes it could be, well, if I say, for example, we increase the conversion rate from 5% to 10%, then if you're talking to higher ups, you could say, well, what that means is that we're going to go from X amount of money to Y amount of money, and that would be great, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. Okay, great. Or it could be that you increase your average order spend from 20 to 25. So you just have to outline it. What that then gives you a chance to do is to say, right, we're going to review this in 6 months, or at the end of the quarter, or at the end of the year, and you have something to go back to where you said, well, this is what we aim to do. We haven't reached it, or we've surpassed it, and this is what we've learned from it, and then we're going to carry on doing things. So you should be tweaking things along the way, but you've got something to aim for. So that's an example of the digital marketing measurement model in practice. So these are actions for you to really think about, to put this into action and to move forward. So what are your business objectives and goals for the next year? I imagine they may be quite different from what they would have been in January. So write out what your business objectives and goals are. If you're not sure, how can you find out? These are the people where if you're a marketing manager, for example, you might need to go to somebody else to ask the question. Sometimes marketing managers don't get the kind of business insights that can be very, very valuable to do their job. So this is a great opportunity, because ultimately it's what they're going to be measured on, whether they know it or not. So it's better if you can just go and actually and ask it and be proactive. It will be what affects whether you get promotion and what jobs you might get in the future. And what is the next thing that you're going to do to get this now? So just think about that now. So I'm going to move on to goals in Google Analytics, which I've briefly talked about. This is how you measure success and how you can get feedback. There is an e-commerce tracking module which is different, and that needs to be set up either by your website developer, or depending on the platform that you're using, there can be plugins to use anyway. So the kind of things that can be measured are going to a location on the website, completing an action, time spent on a website, or a number of pages visited. Now the last two are really only relevant if your business model is to sell advertising space, for example, because then it's more valuable to you if people stay on the website for longer, because then you can charge more for advertising. The first two are the ones that are really going to matter in most cases. Just to explain, going to a location on the website, for example, could be the contact page. Or if you fill out a form, this is not the best way of doing it, but if somebody fills out a form, you could then redirect them to a new page that's completely hidden from anyone other than the redirect. So that means that if someone's on that page, they have definitely done the thing that you wanted them to do. It could also be, so it could be the page after a successful conversion. Completing an action like clicking on a link, if you fill out a form, it is best practice, if you can do, to actually make it so that that send button is what completes an action, and then it's an event. So that can be great. Also, clicking on a link, like you can do a telephone link or an email link, which are the main ones I'm going to say. If you do nothing else, and set those up. Now, if you're not sure, there is a way to have a look at what events. So anything that's an action is an event. There is an area within Google Analytics where you can look at the events that are tracked. They will be broken down by category, action, something else. But you can use that information in order to set up your goals. The only thing to think about between those two is if you're going to a location, then you can use a funnel. So that's the only benefit of using a location. So you can say, I only want to consider this to be a goal completion if somebody's also been to this page and this page before. Anyone who doesn't do that, I think it's a junk lead. So actually, I don't consider that to be a conversion. With completing an action or any kind of event tracking, you don't get to use that funnel. So it's just something to think about, because if the previous pages that they've visited are going to be important for that conversion, then that's great. Normally that's more helpful for e-commerce tracking, to be honest, because you need to make sure that someone's been to the basket and then to the cart before they end up with a completed order. If they end up with a completed order and they haven't been there, then don't know what's happened, but it's probably a bot. So if you do nothing else, please set up these goals. possibly not all three of them, but the first two definitely. Click to email, click to call, and potentially visit a contact page or complete the form. One thing to think about is that if somebody completes a goal, then they've either completed it, which is a 1, or they haven't, and it's a 0. And not all of the available options to you will be of equal relevance. So for some you might want to say, okay, well, if someone signs up to an email newsletter, then that would be a goal completed for me. And it would be a sign of a warm lead. However, it's not as strong a lead as if someone emails you. It's more of a interest in your brand and keeping in contact with your brand. Same thing with like a like on Facebook. That is not as strong a lead to you as email. Or an email to you or filling out a form. So that's one thing to also kind of think about. It is possible within goals to set up a value of each goal, so that can help you to differentiate between the different ones. The other thing to think about, you could set up visiting a contact page as a goal, but I'm just going to put a scenario in front of you. So say, for example, you have your contact page and then you also have an email address on there that's clickable and a contact form, and you set up goals for them. What that means is that, say somebody goes to the contact page and then clicks on the email, then technically they've completed 2 goals, which could send your stats way off. So if you're going to add a click to email and you've got a clickable email link on your website, then don't probably put in place a goal for visiting the contact page. If, however, you don't have a clickable link for an email address on your contact page, then that's fine. Maybe it's just a phone number, and you just and because maybe 75% of your traffic is desktop, so you know that you're not going to find out if someone's called your phone number, then you can add visiting the contact page as a goal. You just got to think about it, because otherwise you can end up skewing your stats by accident. Now, any goal that you do set up, you don't have to view all the goals together. You could say, well, I just want to know how many people completed the click to email, and you can view those stats by themselves, and you can also just view the stats for visit contact form. That's something that you can also do as well. So this is how you set up goals. If you go into Google Analytics, hopefully you've got access. If you haven't, ask for it. In the bottom left there's a cog, and this is where you get into the admin area. So then you've got these 3 areas: account, property, and view. Depending on the level of access you've been given, you should be able to get to your goals. If you can't, go to the person who is administrating this account and ask for a higher level. There's no real reason for you to not be given it. So if you can't see all of these options that I'm showing you now, then it could be that you've got a restricted access. So if you click on goals, then it kind of takes you through a wizard, which enables you to either set up an event, or they've got some kind of templates there which make it an awful lot easier. The extra information that you might need might be the end page, so you might need to ask your developer with help there, but you can see what's set up and what isn't. Now, this is also the area where an awful lot of optimization can happen. There is a blog post I'm going to share in the email afterwards, which is just some optimization tips that you can go through in the settings of your account. Things like filtering out bots and spiders, making sure that the right currency is used on your account, ensuring that you are also connected to Google Search Console, for example. It's not something that I'm going to spend too much time on today, because this is a much smaller kind of presentation than we do in a full class. But Google Search Console is different from Google Analytics in that it's Google telling you how your website is being treated in search engines, and it will give you information on where your website is showing for certain keywords, the click-through rate, the average position, and things like that. You can just go and have a look at that by itself, but when it's connected with Google Analytics, you get a lot more information. For example, you can see what keywords resulted in people coming through to you, and then what happened as a result of that. You couldn't have that second part if the two aren't connected, so that's really helpful. Right, so what I'm going to move on to is talking a little bit about the kind of data that you can get access to as a result of the goals being set up. So this actually is called Data Studio. This is a free product from Google Analytics, and it really helps once you've had a bit of a look through Google Analytics to build up your own dashboards of kind of insights that you want to go and have a look at. What I've actually done here is I've utilised some free custom reports from Avinash Kaushik again. Let me see if this is in here. No, it's not. You can add these custom reports to your dashboard at any point within Google Analytics, but this is the kind of thing, if you set up Data Studio, at the moment there's a template and a walkthrough that helps you to connect your data. It's really comprehensive, so if you go there, then just Google Data Studio, you'll find it. This is a dashboard that we've set up, and actually this is one that we did quite at the beginning. We've changed a lot of how we do it. Most of our reporting is using Data Studio because you can add massive set. You can have multi-page reports, you can switch areas off, you can do have large areas for text, so you can add the insight underneath, and it means that the data is coming in, it's being pulled in from Google Analytics or AdWords or Search Console, or even Google Sheets. If you want to do it that way, you could have a report that's got nothing to do with Google Analytics at all using Data Studio, and then you can have the information underneath. So it's a really good way of combining things without having to, you know, copy and paste tables into Word or something, or get a designer involved. If I wanted to see all of this information, I would have to go to about 10 different areas in Google Analytics, whereas now what I can do is change the date that's at the top and I can view all that information. So I'm going to talk you through each table so that you understand what the value is and the reason why it's managed to get its way here, why I've bothered to include it. Now these bits at the top, sessions, users, bounce rate, to some extent they can seem like a vanity metric, and to some extent they are. The bounce rate for me is worth checking because that's a high bounce rate, so something's going on. So I need to go and have a look at that and find out what's going on. The other thing is to just be aware of is that I found that 50% of my visitors are mobile, so it's an awareness that is important moving forward. I don't have to spend so much time on thinking about that, it's just helpful to know. And then my acquisition channels, this is where traffic is coming from. So in the main, it's organic search, then after that, direct, referral, and social. So organic search, if that percentage is organic search, I probably do want to have a look at what keywords are going on and why that is. So this particular report is more about acquisition channels. I've named it social media, but the point is understanding how people are getting to my website and what that might mean. So as we move to the right, we just dealing with social media. So if 11%, actually a very small percentage of that traffic is social media traffic, if you then break it further down, so it's not just social media, but out of those numbers of visits, how many are LinkedIn, how many Facebook, how many Twitter, and how much is Yelp. That's automatically generated, by the way. I didn't write in Yelp as a criteria, and then there's that same breakdown but as a pie chart next to it, which helps you to get a little bit more understanding. So that's helpful for me to know. And then as I move further down, we've got quality of traffic from all channels, and the reason that quality is possible for us to view is because I've included towards the end goal conversion rate and goal completions. Those are really the most important things. If you do not have conversion rates and completions set up, then bounce rate and pages per session can be good indicators of quality. They're not as good as conversion rates and goal completions, but they are good. So I can see here that organic search, you know, I've got way more visitors coming through, but the bounce rate is actually quite high. People don't necessarily visit that many pages, and the conversion rate is the lowest. So the quality of the traffic, this is the reason why I probably want to have a look at the keywords that are resulting in this organic traffic. But it has resulted, because the sheer volume has resulted in over 1,000 goal completions for this. So this is the reason why you put goal conversion rate and goal completions. You could think, oh, I've got 1,000 conversions, so that's, you know, that's great, but as a percentage of the available conversions, that's not brilliant. If I'm looking at direct traffic, the bounce rate is even higher, but the conversion rate is slightly better, so some of that is good. I might want to have a look at what's happening and what's different with that traffic. So then referral, your bounce rate is a lot better, and it normally is, to be honest. your pages per session slightly higher, and your conversion rate is the best of all of them. Your referral traffic is usually better because it's either from a website where that's sending you almost pre-qualified traffic that are already interested. So if people come through to you, it's because they're already your ideal customers, so that's working better. And then social, this is exactly what I'm referring to, where people haven't converted, but it doesn't mean that they might not do in the future, because the reality is, if someone's got an interaction with you on social, they might be coming through and having a look at things, but they're in a point of the customer journey where they are not primed to buy. They are kind of in the dreaming, okay, well that's quite interesting, it's worth knowing about, but I'm not actively seeking you out. Now if someone's coming through organic searches because they've specifically looked for something that they need, and then they come through to your website, they are ready to buy, or they are locating the thing that they need. So that's the reason why. Now there's no reason why some of that social media traffic in the future couldn't end up being part of the organic search, because they think, okay, well I know that I've read a few articles on there that make sense, and they seem to know what they're doing, so I'm just going to search for that company and come back to the page that I looked at ages ago, which I might have forgotten about. So that, just because social media here isn't doing very well from conversion rates, doesn't mean that it isn't very important. The quality of traffic from social media, this can be helpful though, because if we look at the amount of people coming through, LinkedIn and Facebook are about equal, but the bounce rate on Facebook is much higher. The page per session is much lower. I mean, that it's almost 50% of what it is from LinkedIn, and they still obviously don't have a conversion rate, but those indicators of quality do suggest that the LinkedIn traffic does do a lot better, and that might impact your social media strategy, how much time you spend on LinkedIn as a channel versus Facebook. Twitter, the problem is you haven't really got enough data to deal with, so I wouldn't necessarily take from this any kind of assumptions. There has at least been one conversion, so that's interesting, but you've really got to have more data in order to be able to say that you feel strongly that Twitter you need to spend more time on it. Okay, so here's another example which is on conversions. Just a dashboard. So the reason why I was going on about goal completions before was because you have these big numbers, like total conversion rate and total goal completions, and that's for all of the individual goals that you've set up. So if you've accidentally included a contact form and a contact page, then that will switch that will affect or have an impact on those overall ones. So then we've also broken down underneath, how can we help you form completed, we've done how many completions, and then the conversion rate separately, and then also the visitors contact page, which is a goal for this particular site, and again goal completions and conversion rate. Now you can also see with the table further down that there are arrows, so I'm going to draw your attention to the yellow, the goal completed by location. You can see that after sessions there is a kind of a comparative column, and that can be helpful. It's something that you could add to any of your tables, so I could have added it in the social media one as well, where you see how this data compares to the previous period. If the period is for a month, then it'll be the previous month. If it's for a quarter, it'll be for the previous quarter. And if it's for a year, then it'll be for the previous year. So that gives you an indication of whether that's an improvement or not, which does give you a lot more clarity. If we go back up to the traffic by device and goal completions by device, we actually show this in a completely different way now, because these two pie charts next to each other aren't helpful. Instead, what we have is line graphs, sorry, bar graphs that are horizontal, so laid on their side, and they're side by side, because then you get a comparison of how much the breakdown of traffic by device and then goal completions. The reason this is helpful is to understand if you've got a problem with your mobile user experience or your desktop user experience or your tablet, or gives you an understanding of how people are using it. So they could be doing their research on mobile, but actually they don't want to get in contact or complete a form until they're on the desktop, which with some websites would be a totally normal thing to do. So that's the reason why you would have that information there. You might think that it's a vanity metric, but it's not. It makes you think, well, there might be a problem. So if we move a little bit further down, there's the blue table, which is about event type, and that tells us the categories of different things that have happened. So when I talked about events before, these are things that you can track and set up goals. So it can be helpful to know what's going on. And then the traffic source of conversions. This blue table is not the most relevant. The traffic source of conversions, now this is helpful because, and it mirrors what we saw in the previous slide, where your greatest source of conversion rates, I think I've filtered this by conversion rates, is referral traffic. Yes, I have. Can you see the arrow with conversion rates? That means that it's sorted by, and that's what's brilliant about this, is that Google Data Studio, that's easy for me to say, Google Data Studio, you can also set up a load of filters so that even if somebody hasn't got the level of administrative access that you do to edit things, they can still filter, sort, you can add all sorts in there. So you can share it with your colleagues and they can look at the top line data without asking you for the same report over and over again. So this gives you the kind of information again, but without referring it to social media traffic or anything else. It's just in a separate place. So hopefully that has made the point about the kind of data that you can have a look at. It's worth trying to get that information. There's an awful lot more information, but those are things that you really need to pay attention to. The other thing that you can do is if you find a report in Google Analytics that you find to be particularly helpful, and this is the sort of thing that I go into with the full workshop when I've got more time, but there you can set up email reports to go out automatically. So if you find a report that's really helpful, you can also edit your own, and you can make it so that an email pops up in your inbox every week, every month, or sends it to your colleagues, for example. Those reports, if they're sent over in PDF form, there's normally a link at the top where you can click it and then it opens up in Google Analytics, so you can then dive into it a little bit further. So that's quite a nice way to ensure that you look at these things regularly, so that it reminds you. And then the same is actually possible with Data Studio. So those dashboards that I showed you in the last two slides, they can be set up to be emailed out. You can also download them as PDFs and send over as reports, as we do. So there's an awful lot that can be done with all of them that integrates into your reporting. So this really, what we're doing is going full circle here and talking about how you can report on the insight that you provided. So the first thing that we talked about was figuring out what the objectives were, what the goals were, and setting things up, setting up reports. What you then want to do is to decide at that point, right, well, when are we going to come back and look at this? Is it going to be at the end of the quarter, every 6 months, whatever, and try and put that in the diary. What you want to do when you do report back on the insight is just a reminder of where we're at and the reason why we're doing these things. We decided, but these things. Okay, business objective goals. These are the KPIs that we discussed, and these were our targets. This is what's happened. This is what the result was. We also found these things. Then you go into deciphering, which means, because there's an awful lot. If you are reporting to somebody else, then and sometimes it's just helpful for yourself. Which means that X, Y, and Z. So, and then the next thing is to recommend next steps. Particularly with the targets, what's helpful is the reason why it's helpful to have targets is because you can say, well, you know, we fell short, but we can see these different things that have happened, so we think we need to go and have a look at this data, or we already have looked at this data, or something like that, and we suggest we do this instead. A lot of the time, this is just there's an awful lot of experiments that go on, and split testing, and this is an opportunity to get better. So investigations is about looking at data a little bit better, and then scheduling future meetings and updates. So we'll go full circle here. Next, this is the end of the presentation, but what I am going to do is share with you the webinar replay when it's done over email. I will also link to the blog post on optimizing Google Analytics so that you can go through the steps. There's no point in me doing this in the video because it's a lot easier for you to just go at your own pace and find things. I really would recommend that you have a look at Data Studio and see how it would work for you. We're going to move to Q&A in a minute, but just a reminder before we do that this is week 4 of 12 that are planned so far. Future webinars and series will include one on email marketing, on consistent branding, on PR and finding a good news story, which is a great idea at any point. I think right now it's even more relevant, and also on LinkedIn optimization. There's a lot of opportunity for a bit of housekeeping at the moment. Of course, as always, if there's something that you want to learn about and you'd really like to hear about, then let me know. We've also had, this is week 4, and I've already had 2 guests on, so 50% of them so far have had guests, experts who it really creates a different area of expertise. So if there's somebody who you think would be a great guest to chip in on a subject, then please let me know. So we're now going to move to the Q&A, which is not recorded. You can either put any questions in chat, or you can raise your hand and I can unmute you. If you want to view future dates in the series, then go to idealmarketingcompany.co.uk/crisis-communications, where all the future dates are listed and what's going to be on, plus the ability to join our newsletter to be notified when the video is available and future dates. But for you here, it's every Wednesday at 11 AM for 12 weeks.